Hi, everyone. I'm Rick Barron, your host, and welcome to my podcast. That's life, I swear. So here's a question. Did you read the morning newspaper this morning? Was it the paper version or the digital version? Now, if you use the digital version, you're part of the changing population that's contributing to the newspaper industry disappearing. It could be eroding democracy in the United States as we know it. Let's jump into this. The decline of the traditional newspapers in the United States has been rapidly taking a very downward turn for the past few decades. With the advent of the internet and the rise of digital media, newspapers have been struggling to maintain their relevance in an ever-changing media landscape. Now, the result of this struggle has been a loss of more than 2 newspapers a week, which is a major blow to the newspaper industry, and as I said, a cost to our democracy. Since 2005, the United States has lost over 1/4 of its newspapers, and it's on track to lose a third by the year 2025, per a report from Northwestern Now. The report said that the country had about 6,400 newspapers at the end of May of 2022, and that's down from almost 8,900 in 2005. Now, while the pandemic did not quite cause the reckoning that some in the industry feared, about 360 newspapers have been shut down since the end of 2019. All but 24 of them weeklies serving small communities. An estimated 75,000 journalists worked in newspapers in 2006, and now that number is down to 31,000. Annual newspaper revenue slipped from $50 billion to $21 billion in the same period. Now, those type of stats don't give you very glowing headlines in the newspapers. Now, the role of newspapers in a democratic society cannot be overstated. Newspapers serve as an important source of information, providing citizens with the news and opinions to stay informed and engaged in the political process. They provide a platform for investigative journalism, which is crucial in uncovering corruption, wrongdoing, and other forms of unethical behavior. Now, the loss of newspapers, therefore, means that the loss of a vital source of information for citizens puts our democracy at risk. Now, why is this happening? Let me give you a few bullet points here. Number 1, the rise of digital media. The internet and the proliferation of smartphones and social media platforms have fundamentally changed the way people consume news. I mean, look around. People are just glued to their mobile phones. And many readers have shifted away from the print newspapers in favor of online news sources because, for the most part, they're free. Okay, I'll give you that. Number 2, declining advertising revenue. Print advertising revenue has been declining for many years, as advertisers are finding that they have to shift their budgets to digital advertising. This has had a very significant impact on the financial viability of print newspapers. Number 3, changes in ownership structures. Today, many newspapers are owned by large media conglomerates or private equity firms that are primarily concerned with maximizing profits. This has led to cost-cutting measures such as reducing staff and coverage areas, which can lead to a decline in the quality of journalism and a loss of readership. Number 4, consolidation and mergers. In recent years, there has been a trend towards consolidation and mergers in the newspaper industry. This has led to fewer newspapers and less competition, which can make it more difficult for smaller newspapers to survive. 5, changing demographics. The demographics of a newspaper readership are changing. Younger readers are less likely to read print newspapers and more likely to consume news through social media or online sources, as I mentioned earlier. The decline of newspapers is also a result of economic pressures. Today's economic downturn has hit the newspaper industry extremely hard, making it increasingly difficult for newspapers to maintain their traditional business models. Now, this has led to a decline in advertising revenues as businesses have been forced to cut back on their ad budgets in response to the economic downturn. Additionally, the rise of digital media has made it so much easier for people to access news and information, and as I said, for the most part, it's all free. And this has all resulted in a decline in newspaper subscriptions and further reduced revenue for the newspaper industry. The loss of newspapers is not only a cost to our democracy, but also to the communities that they serve. I mean, think about it. Newspapers provide an important source of information for local communities, keeping them informed about local issues, politics, and events. Additionally, the decline of newspapers can also result in the loss of jobs, as many people are employed in the newspaper industry, from reporters and editors, graphic designers, and printers. Now, recent studies suggest that the decline of local journalism affects any measure of governance by the decline of local journalism. Now, suffice it to say, there may be no single cure for America's newsrooms. Still, one thing is very clear here. Local journalism is facing near extinction, and with it, the quality of local governance necessary to sustain a healthy American entity. Thus, no local news is bad news. As people stop reading physical newspapers, many newspapers are forced to end their print editions and go fully online. They have no choice. The death of so many newspapers have created countless news deserts with no local news sources. Now, here's a data point. An estimated 70 million Americans live in a county with no local news whatsoever. This is a massive issue, deeply tied to the issue of misinformation, and God knows we get enough of that. People just don't have access to reliable local news sources, and many do not even trust the national sources. The rise of the internet has made it very easy for people to access information and has given rise to social media becoming the major source of news and information. And here lies the problem with how this type of model could damage democracy. And I think we've seen over time that social media's purpose is not known to provide accurate information. In many ways, it is made to do just the complete opposite. Social media is built to capture and hold the attention of the viewer. Therefore, the accuracy of what is depicted is not a high priority with these guys. And this setup is very dangerous. Let's face it, algorithms have become the new newspaper reporters. With social media's ease of spray painting the news, everyone has an opinion that can be shared openly. Everyone can call themselves a reporter today. In short, a keyboard warrior. This state of affairs is even more dangerous than people initially predicted. Think about it. The January 6th insurrection was a prime example of how misinformation is affecting the public psyche. Even Fox News was recently caught having amplified information on the 2020 election fraud claims, only to ensure that the goal of misinformation helped the bottom line. So let's cut to the chase here, shall we? The decline of traditional newspapers in the United States is a cost to our democracy and to the communities that they serve. The loss of more than 2 newspapers a week, or any newspaper, means the loss of a vital source of information for citizens and a decline in the number of educated journalists, which can have a negative impact on the quality and the availability of news and information. So what can we learn from this story? What's the takeaway? The decline of newspapers has important implications for the future of American media and society as a whole. It's a cost to our democracy and to the communities that they serve. Seeing local newspapers fade away and replaced with pseudo newspapers, social media, and news channels, just priming the channels with whatever will anchor the audience to their channel, only cultivates a population that is construed to believe falsehoods rather than substantiated facts. The spread of misinformation and conspiracy theories can have serious consequences for public health, democracy, and social cohesion. Upholding the role of journalism as a vital pillar of our democracy is critical. Not doing so is not doing us any favors long term. So do yourself a favor. Pick up a morning paper tomorrow. Read it. Go through it. And put the mobile phone to the side. I think you'll enjoy it. Well, there you go. That's life, I swear. For further information regarding material covered in this episode, I invite you to visit my website, which you can find on either Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, for show notes calling out key pieces of content mentioned in the episode transcript. As always, I thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe here or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. See you soon.